Hello, welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to be attempting to make some pens. Now, I've never actually successfully made pens before, so we're going to see how this turns out. Now, to make these pens, I have this purple fabric. It's kind of stretchy. It's a knit fabric and it's kind of like purple aubergine type thing. It has a little bit of texture to it, but not too much, so it's pretty clear, and I thought it would be fun to make some pens out of. Now, when I bought this, I didn't actually mean to buy this. But I was looking at the local market for just some fun fabrics to make some clothes out of, and I came across this stall that had like these fabric coupons for, and they went per 3. So I actually found 2 that I made into some t-shirts for myself, but I still needed a 3rd. So I spent quite a while there just looking at the fabrics. So I figured, well, I'll just take this purple fabric because there's not too much to it, so I could probably think of something to make. And actually I already came up with a plan as soon as I got home. I figured it might be fun to make some pens out of it. Now, this is only about 1.5 by 1.5 meters, so I'm not actually sure if I'll have enough to make pens out of, but we're just gonna go ahead and see. As I said before, I've never successfully made pens before. I've tried once, and those pens actually turned out way too big. Now I will still at some point go back and alter them. I've been wanting to for a while, but I don't actually like adjusting clothing. I don't like fixing clothing, I just like making it. So I've been procrastinating on that for a while, but I really do like the fabric and I would really like to have a pair of pens made from it, so I think I will go back and do that at some point. But right now I figured might as well just make pens from scratch. So let's get started on the design first. I usually take my notebook and draw out the basic design before I start doing anything else. For these pens, I want them to be high-waisted because I absolutely hate low-waisted pens. They just keep sliding off of me and I don't want to spend my day hoisting up my pens all the time. Also, I want them to be full length and I want them to flare out a little at the bottom because I like that. Lastly, I want them to have pockets, because why would you make your own clothes without putting pockets in it? It's a perfect opportunity to actually make this practical addition to clothing. So, pockets it is. After I've made the design for the pens, it's time to draw out some pattern pieces. I'm not drawing them to scale yet, but just drawing out the basic shape gives me an idea of what the pattern pieces should look like. Afterwards, I can draw them to scale on the pattern paper itself. I'm not sure how wide I want the waistband to be yet. I think that's also going to be dependent on how much fabric I have left. I do want the waistband to be stretchy. The fabric itself has quite a bit of stretch to it, but I actually think that's a bit too much for my waistband. So I'll be adding a piece of elastic to give it some more support while keeping the amount of stretch. I'm not going to be lining these pens. The fabric is not very see-through, so I don't really think it needs it. Besides, I plan to wear these pants in summer as well, and I think 1 layer of fabric is plenty for summer. Now that we're done drawing, I think it's time for some pattern paper. Just kidding, we need to measure everything first. I started with the obvious, my waist measurement. Next, I measured the length I want the pants leg to be, and then it was time for the crotch situation. Now I used this tip from Charlie from the Stitchery. Basically what you do is you take some metal wire, like this one right here, and you put it in between your legs where the crotch of your pants would be. I put this belt on my waist to make sure it aligned with my waist on both the front and the back end. And once it's done, it makes a frame like this. We will be using that later. Next, I took my thigh circumference and my knee circumference. Lastly, I measured the distance between my waist and the crotch seam, and the distance between the crotch seam and my knee. Now it's really time for some pattern paper. I'm using the measurements that I just took to draw out the pattern pieces to scale. And this is where the metal frame comes in handy. In theory, you can just trace half of it to your front panel and half to your back panel to get the curve that makes up the crotch seam. And then we just add the rest of the lines to that shape. Okay, so this is the end result of the pattern on the paper that I drew. So this on the left is the front and this on the right is supposed to be the back piece. You see the flare here at the bottom. I put a dart on top of the back piece because I think you're supposed to do that, but I don't really know. I have no idea how this is going to turn out, but at least I think by now I'll have enough fabric for 4 of these pieces, so that's a good start. Turns out it was not enough fabric. As you can see, the pieces were overlapping quite a bit, but I decided that if I just made the flare on the bottom a little less wide, I could probably get away with it. That did leave the issue of whether or not I had enough fabric for the waistband and the pockets, but I decided that was a problem for later. Worst case scenario, I might have to pull another type of fabric out of my closet. I ended up with 2 front panels, 2 back panels, 2 panels for the pockets, and enough for the waistband. Not quite bad. The only thing I need to find some other fabric for is half the pocket pieces that I will just put on the inside of the pocket so you won't see them very much. Then it was time to actually start constructing the pants. I started off by pinning the front and back panels together and trying it on just to see if the fit wasn't terrible. So far it looked quite promising. It's not way too small, it's not way too big, all the pieces seem to align with the right places. So let's continue putting this together. The first step was to sew together the crotch seam of the front 2 panels and the crotch seam of the back 2 panels. I didn't get much further, unfortunately, because afterwards my camera battery decided I was done for today. So yesterday, after I finished sewing together the front and the front 2 legs and the back 2 legs, all I ended up doing was finding some different fabric for the inside of the pockets. I had some of this, it's just black cotton. There's not much to it. It doesn't have stretch, but I guess it'll give the pockets a little bit extra sturdiness. I'll use this for the side you won't see, and I'll use these purple panels for the part that does actually show on the outside. And we'll see how that turns out in the end. You shouldn't be seeing the black, and if you do, it's not a bad combination. It's pretty fine. And so we continued. The next step was to put together the pockets. For those, I aligned the purple and the black fabric and pinned along the edges. I'm going to sew along one of the longer edges, one of the shorter edges, and half of the other long edge. This will leave the remaining short edge to be put into the waistband and half of the long edge to actually put my hand into. Because I'm using 2 different types of fabric, I needed to pay extra close attention that I made both pockets mirror images of each other, so they would end up in the pants symmetrically. Because the black fabric was kind of fraying a bit, I decided to put French seams in the pockets. I didn't do those for the rest of the pants, because the purple fabric doesn't really need it, and honestly I can't be bothered. For the French seams, I wanted the seams to be on the outside of the pocket, so they wouldn't be in the way when I put my hands in them. For this, I first sewed the wrong sides of the 2 pockets together. Afterwards, I trimmed the edge of the seam as close to the thread as possible. Next, I flipped it inside out, making sure the corners were nice and sharp. Lastly, I sewed along the same seam again, but now with the right sides together. Now I know you're supposed to iron your seams in between these steps, but honestly, to me it just feels like a lot of extra steps that I don't always feel like doing. So I didn't. Honestly, these pockets are going to be on the inside of the pants, and although I really like them to be there and they're very practical, they don't need to be that clean per se. To create the curved shape that pockets usually have when they're in pants, I pinned the pocket piece to the front leg. I then went in with my crayon pen to draw out the rough shape of it. After I cut it out, I used the cut off pieces to create a shape on the other side to make it more symmetrical. After they were cut out, I pinned the curved edges together so I could sew them together. And this is what it looks like with the pockets attached to the front half of the pants. With the front half and the back half both finished, it was now time to attach them together. So I sewed together the outside of the legs first, and then sewed together the inner part of the legs. For now, I kept the darts in the back just pinned, because I want to try it on before I sew them together. Okay, figure I sewed together the sides and the inside seam, and I've put it on for a second just to see how it fits. Now, This is a little loose, so I think I'll go and take that in a bit. And the front I think is also a little loose, so I'll make some darts here in the front just to gather it a little bit. And then the main problem I'm having right now is that the front and the back of the pant legs, the front is way longer than the back and the back is kind of short. So I'm not sure how that's gonna turn out, but we'll see. Regardless of that, I'm pretty happy with how it fits. It has some kinks to work out, but nothing too major. After fixing the fit issues and sewing the darts closed, it was time to work on the waistband. Because I had barely any fabric left, I had to divide the waistband into 2 pieces instead of just having one. So I sewed those together first. Then I folded the waistband in half, which is the actual shape it's gonna be in later. I dug up a piece of quite sturdy elastic and measured it out to be about the same length as the waistband. Because the elastic is going to be my waist measurement, it means the pants won't be very tight fitting around my waist, but they should be tight enough to just stay on. The added benefit of this is that the elastic will stretch over my hips to actually put the pants on. Also not an unimportant part of clothing, being able to actually put it on. I sewed the 2 ends of the elastic together to create a circle shape, the same shape as the waistband, and started pinning them together. I made sure to align the seam of the elastic with one of the seams of the waistband and to first divide the waistband and the elastic up in half so that each half had the same amount of elastic. I then divided it in fourths, and then before sewing it together I attached the entire waistband to the pants. This time I made sure that the seams of the waistband aligned with the side seams of the pants. This way you would not get a seam in the middle at the front of the pants. I think that looks a little nicer. Because of all the stretch going on with the elastic and the waistband and the pants fabric, this was a little finicky to do, especially because there's also quite a lot of layers at this point. I'm not sure that if I do this in the future, I'll do it again like this, because in hindsight, maybe I should have just sewed together the elastic and the waistband first, and then sewed it onto the pants. But we're here now, we're gonna try. So the last stretch of sewing was just me attaching the waistband and hemming the bottom of the pants. Of course, a project can't be almost finished without something going wrong, so my needle broke. But I replaced it and continued. After that, my bobbin thread was empty, so I had to wait for that to fill up again. I guess it's part of it. And then I was finally able to finish it. Let's take a look at the result. Alright, so I think I actually successfully made pants this time. Now, they're not 100% perfect. They have some things that could have been neater, some things, well, that could have been better. The pants legs could have been a little longer, although I don't think they're too short, so that's great. I can actually wear these and not feel ridiculous about having like half my lower leg show. But I'm actually really happy with them. So yeah, that's nice. I can move in them fairly well, which was to be expected because the fabric is quite stretchy. It might still be a little bit on the big side, so I will alter the pattern a little bit just so that in the future I can use it and it will be a little bit better than it is now. I'll also add the alterations that I did where I like took in the upper part of the legs and made the little pleats in the front. But overall I'm really happy. I hope whoever's still watching this has enjoyed watching it, and I hope to see you next time when I either sew something else or work on a different project. I don't really know yet what I want to do on this channel, but basically it's just gonna be me showing off things that I want to be showing. So if you enjoy that, please stick around for more and have a very nice day. Bye!